Hey guys, John Powell here. Actionable Intelligence, Sunday, March 10th, 2019. And it's been several weeks since I've been on. I've had a lot of other job-related activities take me away where I've been working quite a few hours. But based on some of the news that we've seen, I've had an opportunity to get on today, and I wanted to put together a short presentation about specifically why I'm getting more bullish on gold. I've really turned from gold. I was kind of neutral on it. In the portfolio, we do have a royalty company, gold and silver royalty company, but I am beginning to become more and more bullish on gold in the medium and long term, increasingly also in the short term. So I want to lay out some things today of why I am in that view. I will remind everyone that Actionable Intelligence Alert newsletter, where we follow a lot of these items. I probably won't get into any specific names on this call, but if you are interested in how I transfer these types of thought processes that I put out in these videos into actual stock picks, and then I encourage you to follow the link that I include in the show notes, and ask that you consider taking a subscription to our newsletter, the Actionable Intelligence Alert. So anyways, moving on, kind of wanted to talk about where we are right now in the cycle. I don't really want to get into predicting stock markets and economic cycles. It's very difficult, and I don't really like to do that. What I do like to do, though, is understand that the economy is cyclical. We will have a recession, and we will have a stock market decline at some point. I would suggest that 10 years into an expanding economy, one of the longest bull markets of all time, valuations where they are, I think your risk is to the downside, not the upside. So having said that and set that as the founding statement, it looks like, there was a lot of, shall we say, optimism when Jay Powell became the Federal Reserve Chairman. He was going to raise rates. He was on the record when he wasn't the chair that he was against quantitative easing, and he was, he's not an academic. He's been in the real world, and he understands how things needed to be, and he was going to normalize rates, and he was going to shrink the balance sheet, and he was just Mr. Wonderful. He was Paul Volcker incarnate. Well, all it took was a 20% decline in the stock market in the Q4 of 2018, and this guy became Janet Yellen overnight. He's embracing the reality, as they said in a Street.com headline, of untried monetary policies in a new era. Okay, well, the new era is that the Fed is politicized. It's always been politicized. The stock market dropped, and you have Trump out there idiotically, taking credit for the overvalued stock market when he was calling it a bubble during the campaign, when he was campaigning for president. As soon as he became president, he started touting it as a validation of his economic policies. As soon as this thing dropped, he was tweeting all over the place about, the Federal Reserve is the, devil, and they need to, they're evil and all this other stuff. Well, Powell, has felt the pressure, and so now he's been giving speeches. Well, we're going to really take a look at the data and the models. For a guy that's not an academic and didn't really believe in those things, supposedly, now we're going to use the models and look at the data in real time. So what that really means is that you can forget about any more interest rate increases, and you will probably see at the first hint of, obvious economic data weakening, which we're already seeing around autos and housing. I think you'll see a suspension of quantitative tightening, and at some point as a recession becomes obvious, we will see another round of interest rate cuts, which there's not much to cut because you're only slightly above 2%, which is half the level you were at the beginning of the last recession. And you have less bullets in the chamber, and they'll have to go to a QE4 situation. I put this chart up because it's very interesting. You see the deficits have been increasing since 2015, yet this is supposed to be some big economic recovery. So I'm curious, you know, if the deficits are going up during an economic recovery, what happens when we have the next recession? It's probably going to get very ugly. And I think this is a good segue into why I am negative on the dollar going forward and bullish, becoming increasingly bullish on gold. Budget deficit last year, 2018, was slightly under $800 billion. That means the United States spent $800 billion more than it took in and added it to its total debt, which is at an all-time record now, over $22 trillion. The projected deficit for 2019 is $900 billion, and that's with no recession. So we're supposed to be in some of the greatest economic recovery of all time, or according to Trump, everything's gangbusters, everything's wonderful, media telling us, you know, how great everything is, and yet we're running a $900 billion deficit. The economic data, as I indicated earlier, appears to be weakening, and the deficit will easily go over $1 trillion in the next recession. And this is explained easily by the fact that there are certain built-in legislative stabilizers, if you will, that cause spending to go up during recession, i.e. unemployment insurance payments, EBT, these kind of things that are social welfare net, if you want to call it that, that are legislated, that are forced spending. So you will see the deficit go up as the next recession hits. So what will the Fed do as rate cuts will have a limited effect, because rates are really not that high right now. They're only, like I said, slightly over 2%. And I guess they could cut them to 0. And then what do you do? I guess you're looking at QE4, where they'll stop the balance sheet decline and then start adding to the balance sheet again. I would suggest to you that if things get bad enough, and they probably will get kind of nasty, because I do see a corporate bond debacle as being the next big financial crisis. I think you'll probably see corporate bond buys by the Fed. You'll probably see, like you saw in Japan, I mean, there are days when there are no bids in the Japanese government bond market because the Bank of Japan virtually owns all of the debt of the Japanese government. They've also increasingly taken stakes in various stock ETFs, corporate bonds. I mean, it's just a totally politicized economy that I think we're moving towards. Another reason, you know, gold, why I think gold's going higher and the dollar lower, economic instability and concentration of wealth is leading to populism and socialism. This will not be an environment where problems get solved. I mean, look at the current political dynamic, if you will, in the United States. You have the country basically split 50-50, the coasts against the hinterland or the center of the country for the most part. And you have people on the progressive left and left wing on the coasts. You have the people in the center that are center or center right. And these people hate each other. They don't get along. And the vitriol continues to grow. I mean, especially the fact that 50% of the country has not accepted the fact that the president, whether you like him or not, was elected fair and square, and he is the president. And they simply will not accept this. So, I mean, this is not a situation where we're going to get some kind of legislation passed or deal with all these problems that I'm going to be talking about in a minute. This thing's just going to go just left to grow, if you will, this cancerous mass of leftover issues that have not been dealt with for over a generation. And the country is not moving in a direction, I think, that indicates that there will be any coming together over a box of Entenmann's and coffee and let's talk this over. You're on the verge of civil war if you're not already in a slight civil war. I don't think that is hyperbole. I think that's my observation. I don't understand how this is dollar positive long term, but the rest of the world, you know, sometimes you can say it's the cleanest pair of underwear in the hamper, in the dirty hamper. So I will remind people that the US dollar and gold typically have a very strong inverse relationship. When the dollar is up, gold goes down. The dollar goes down, gold goes up. So just to summarize reasons I am turning bullish on gold. I'm long-term dollar bearish. I just do not see the deficit situation or the debt situation or the entitlement situation or the fact that all these different states are bankrupt and they're going to run to the federal government. All their pensions are bankrupt. And when you live in a democracy where everyone can vote, whether or not they have a stake in the society or not, that's a whole nother discussion which I'm not going to get into. People are going to vote for free shit. And people that say, I'm going to give you something, or tell you that, or tell not you, the listeners here, but a large part of the hoi polloi, if you will, the uneducated, unwashed masses, that the reason your life sucks is not because you don't take responsibility for it, or you have allowed, collectively voted for irresponsible people to represent you for 2 generations. No, you just go in there and these bad rich people over here, I'll take their money and give it to you. It's very simple. It happens all over the world. That's the typical way things are done. And, you know, I don't see how that's productive or instills a sense of optimism and confidence that leads to a growing economy and conversely a dollar that's going to strengthen. I mean, we have uncontrollable debt spending. I mean, you have Republican administration. You have, at one time, I mean, the Congress, outgoing Congress that was Republican controlled, increased spending by $300 billion. That's why you're on the sugar high right now in the economy. So, you know, forget about them dealing with it. Nobody's going to deal with it. It's going to have to come to a crisis. I don't know when that is. I don't know where the tripwire is. But, you know, nothing gets solved in a democracy unless it's a crisis. And that's the worst way to solve a problem, because then you get all kinds of weird, wacky ideas that typically make the problem even worse. Entitlement spending. No one talks about it. It's going to destroy the United States as a political entity. Most of the people in the United States that vote are old people. The baby boomers are retiring. 10,000 a day are going on. 10,000 a day for the next 15 to 20 years are going on Social Security and Medicare every day. Okay? There's not enough money to pay for it. The requirements are somewhere north of $100 trillion. The GDP of the United States is only $22 trillion a year. Some people say that entitlement spending is $200 trillion in unfunded liabilities. If anybody tried to do this in the private sector, in an insurance company or a pension fund, they would be thrown in jail for fraud. Yet the United States government continues this fiction. Ron Paul brought this up with Alan Greenspan many years ago during a Federal Reserve testimony in front of Congress. And Greenspan very calmly understands the problem, as did Mr. Paul, probably the only 2 people in the room that did understand the problem and the issue. And Mr. Greenspan said, I have no doubt that as long as the United States has a reserve currency, i.e. the US dollar is the reserve currency, they have a printing press and they can print the money and pay the benefits. However, I give no guarantee of the value of that dollar that's paid. Well, that's exactly right. This is exactly what goes on in these third world banana republics like Venezuela. I mean, I'm currently rereading, you know, a book about the Weimar Germany hyperinflation. And it's really interesting because it's a lot of the same justifications and thought processes that I'm hearing today from a lot of proponents of modern monetary theory, people on the progressive left, that we can just print wealth out of thin air. Who cares? The government is this cornucopia. It's this like unicorn that can just, you know, magically bestow wealth. And it's only because people are mean and evil that they haven't done it. So the entitlement spending, is going to reach a situation, and because we live in a democracy, there's not going to be the entitlement reform. What they'll attempt to do is pay it. They'll attempt to print the money until it becomes a crisis. And then, who knows what will happen after that. So, you can think up all kinds of theories of where they're going to get the money. I will say this, if you have money, you need to start thinking about how you're going to protect it from these people. I mean, they're talking about wealth taxes. They're talking about, taxing the wealthy. They're not going to be able to raise enough revenue by just, this discussion of a 70% marginal tax rate on every dollar over 10 million. That's just to move the Overton window to taxing people, okay? Because all that people will do that have income over 10 million will structure their payments out such that they don't cross the threshold, so they don't have a marginal dollar that ends up getting taxed. That's what people don't seem to understand. The real money is in the middle class. So this is to move the Overton window, and then they'll be like, yeah, let's tax the rich. Those guys. No, what they'll say is, lower my, okay, I'm Bryce Harper. I'm supposed to get $30 million here. Let's structure this and pay it out over 20 years instead of me getting my. I mean, that's what people will do. Accountants and lawyers, that's what they get paid to do, is to figure out how to skirt these things. I got news for you. The people in the government and these congressmen and senators that they're not very bright people. That's why they're there. And the private sector and these attorneys and lawyers and wealth advisors are always going to be one step ahead. When they point the cannon at these people, it's to move the Overton window, to move the discussion towards getting people to talk about taxing the wealthy. And it doesn't matter who's the wealthy. That's what you need to be concerned with. Another reason why I think I'm getting bullish on gold is, the unstable U.S. political situation. None of these things are going to get resolved in a bipartisan manner. It's going to be about who can get raw power and shove their view down the other 50. It's going to be 50 plus 1 telling the other 50% what to do. And now you're starting to see a rise of socialism. This is mind-boggling for me. I mean, but it's not really, though, because we're seeing now this first generation of people kind of in this millennial generation, and I don't make a blanket, generalization, but this is the first generation that has been steeped in the Frankfurt School of progressivism, socialism, SJW bullshit since they were in K4 all the way through fucking, getting their master's degree. They have no sense of history. How can someone be a socialist or a communist with the history that has gone there? It has never worked. It is 100% certain. It goes against logic and human nature. It's demonstrable. But yet we're going to try it again. And the only reason is because that's what people have been steeped in and taught. That's why people are for it now. And, people say, well, you're not going to convince people with logic. If somebody's been taught these things, it's very difficult to unlearn what you've been taught. I've found that out. Once somebody learns something, once somebody is convinced of something, it's very difficult to change their view. So they'll go ahead and try it. It won't work. I don't know how that'd be dollar positive long term. We have this free shit army now. And excuse my language, this stuff really aggravates me. I mean, we're just giving this away. I don't know why, but we are. We're importing a third world peasant class. We're giving them free stuff, and we're going to pay for it by printing money out of thin air. Also, the Democrats can have a compliant peasant class that they can control that supposedly is going to vote for them, and the Republicans can have cheap labor. I put out a tweet this week when somebody, this whole immigration, I don't want any immigration. I want all immigration stopped. I know I'm in a distinct minority on that, but I have been in these small Midwestern towns for the last 5 years building wind farms, and there's all kinds of depression going on here. There's no economic growth. People are despondent. People look bad. You're looking at people in the grocery store, they don't look good. Alcoholism, opiate addiction, no prospects, no future, no optimism. Apple Computer has $250 billion in cash on its balance sheet. It can't carve out $1 billion or $2 billion and create an institute and go out and find the best and brightest in rural Indiana and southern Illinois and Missouri. There's got to be some high IQ kids out there that they could bring to an Apple Institute and train them to be engineers. No, but that's difficult and expensive. It's easier just to go get an Indian from Hyderabad or, Mumbai for $32,500 a year on an H-1B visa. And that was a little bit of a rant, but, this is what I'm talking about. This is total economic piracy and, couched in technological innovation. It's just symptomatic of an empire in decline, in my view. And this whole MMT thing, well, as long as we don't print too much money and it doesn't, because we've got this lower inflation right now, and then, did it occur to anybody that the printing of money, like in QE4, actually causes deflation? Because it causes, you give all this free money out and all these uneconomic projects get built and it lowers the cost of things. I.e., look at the shale boom. The whole thing was caused, it's uneconomic. Most of these companies are not cash flow positive, forget about making a profit, and the only reason they exist is they were able to sell hundreds of billions of dollars worth of debt in bonds, okay, and private equity money that came in that was enabled by zero interest rates and currency unit printing by the Federal Reserve. So I know this is like sounding kind of dark. This is kind of, negative, but I'm thinking about these things. This is what's going on. These are facts. I may be interpreting. I'm probably being a little bit, there's a little bit of hyperbole in some of the things I'm saying, but these things are happening. The U.S. is in decline. If you don't live in New York or L.A. or Chicago or something, where you're on the artsy fartsy section of town, and you're going to cocktail parties with the elite, or you're in Washington D.C. in that bubble, the rest of the country you're really not doing that well. If you go to some of these, red counties, if you will, and I guess, the progressive, masters of the universe that live in these places probably don't care. But, that's not going to be, that's why you have this division, because, people are finally waking up. No one cares about my plight. No, where's my future? What are my kids supposed to do? And yet I'm being told I'm this bad person. Around the world, this wealth inequality genie is out of the bottle and will not be put back in. Higher taxes on the wealthy, wealth taxes, Green New Deal. I mean, you knew the Green New Deal was bullshit when, when this thing was probably, it sounds like it was put together in a weekend in some college Marxist working group or something of, sophomores at, some Ivy League college. I mean, they threw everything in there in the kitchen sink, so, the question has to be, if the world's going to end in 12 years based on climate change, according to Ocasio-Cortez, are we really worried about paying prevailing wages and making sure that we have racial and sexual hiring fairness in executing the Green New Deal? I mean, seriously? I mean, if a comet was going to hit the Earth in 2 years, and we were trying to put together this team of people to, build some kind of energy device or rocket or something to knock it off course, would our main goal be to make sure that we had, enough transgender people on the team? I mean, the whole thing is just a pretext to, throw every progressive, socialist, and communist, Marxist, talking point against the wall and see what sticks. Again, it's moving the Overton window. What's the Overton window? What is the acceptable, window or area of speech, political speech? And, now we're talking about socialism, modern monetary theory, everything is the political. Everything is about social justice. Everything, nothing about reality. It's, everybody has been divided into either an oppressed class or an oppressor class. I simply don't see how this is positive dollar-wise and how we're going to get anything done in this country moving forward when we have a crisis. And many crises are coming our way. We have a pension crisis. We have a debt crisis. Next time the economy goes down, we're going to probably have a corporate bond explosion that's going to be as big as the last crisis. At some point in Europe, you're going to have sovereign debt crises, probably emanating and starting in Italy. Greece, okay, China, we don't know what's going on over there. So we have a lot of things happening that lead me to believe that are becoming less positive in my mind. Let's put it that way, and going into the negative. So that's the conditions that gold thrives in. Now, another thing that's actually piqued my interest is the fact that we've seen these big gold mergers happening. You know, we're at like peak gold. There's really not been enough investment in gold, new discoveries. And so instead of going out and finding gold, these companies are merging and trying to drive costs out and trying to maintain, you know, their high level of production. Otherwise, they're just going to shrink and become irrelevant. So I think that's another thing that kind of is cluing me in. It's like starting to coalesce in my mind around a longer term, you know, get positive on gold longer term. So that's my thesis. I know it's kind of a dark, kind of a rant, if you will, but you know, hit me up in the comments. Tell me where I'm wrong. Let's have a discussion about this. Tell me why I should be positive. Tell me how my thoughts are off here. So happy to have that discussion. Things are slowing down on my real job, so I should be on here weekly, guys, going forward, but definitely appreciate the support and the listening, and hope to talk to you next week. Thanks.